she fit absolutely everything on my list. The great part about making that list and really focusing on the ideal woman was it enabled me that if I went on a date, I knew right away if this person was right for me or not.
Everybody loves Brian, and I loved Brian, but I didn't think about a future, like that.
Hello and welcome to a Lifelong Love Affair podcast. I'm your host, Lana Carius, and I'm so glad to have you here with me today. My goal is to help you create and manifest the lifelong love affair that you desire and deserve to have. No matter where you are in your love journey, you are in the right place. This is a must-watch double date podcast episode with me, my husband, Peter Carius, and our guests today, Cory and Brian Proctor. Cory is a wonderful and incredible woman. She's also a wife and a mother. She's worked with Bob Proctor for many, many years. And she led his consulting division. She worked in seminars, and she also coached and trained his consultants. Brian Proctor is Bob Proctor's son, and he's such an inspiring man. He's also a husband and a father. Brian's lifelong success came from his masterful application of all the teachings that he's learned from his father throughout the years. He didn't only grow up with Bob Proctor, but he also worked with him for over 30 years. He played a key role in Bob Proctor's seminars. He also spoke at seminars and he mentored clients. Brian was also Bob Proctor's best friend. For anyone who's not familiar with Bob Proctor, Bob was one of the most influential and important leaders and teachers in the space of law of attraction and personal development. And this still stands true today. Bob has helped millions of people around the world transform their lives. And his teachings still live with us today and have been transferred into every single person who's been impacted and touched by his work and his heart. Many of us will have known of Bob Proctor through the movie The Secret, which was a very, very popular movie and was reached by millions of people around the world. So I encourage you guys to take a look at the movie The Secret if you are not familiar with it. So my husband and I have also been impacted by Bob Proctor so deeply, and our lives have been transformed because of his teachings. So it is my honor today to welcome Cory and Brian Proctor so that they can show us how their application of Bob Proctor's teachings have helped them find each other and create their own lifelong love affair. Hello, Cory. Hello, Brian. How are you guys doing today?
Really good.
We're great. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining. It's such a pleasure to have you guys here, and I think it's going to be a very fun double date podcast today. So my husband, Peter Carius, is also here. So welcome, Peter.
Thank you.
So we've actually met before, and I am so intrigued and by your story, how you guys met as a couple and now are married. And Brian, like I've taken programs with Bob. Bob is he's such an amazing person. He's really helped us. His teachings have helped us change our relationship to like a completely whole new level. So I'm super excited to have you guys here and to share your story. So maybe what we could do is you guys could share your individual stories of how you met, your love story, and how, your journeys and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Do you want me to start, Cory?
Yes, you go ahead and start.
It's funny. Our story it's kind of fun and interesting. So I met Cory in I think it was 2012, give or take a little bit, but right around there. And I can still remember even where I was sitting when I saw her. When she walked in, I remember sitting at this high top table in the lobby of a hotel, and it was like, wow. And she came in, that was her first introduction to all of us. She just started to work with us, and she sat at the table, and just hearing her speak, everything about her was just magical. But nothing happened for quite a few years. We worked together for several years. I was actually in a relationship, but it wasn't a good one, and and I was getting out of. And I remember when I got out of that relationship, I moved. I was living in Toronto at the time. I moved down to Florida. I was just looking for a complete change, and I moved somewhere that really I used to vacation at. I thought, boy, it'd be kind of fun to live at a place you vacation at. So that's why I moved there. And I was really just kind of resetting my life and really trying to figure out who I was again, and really get set in what I wanted. And I didn't date or do anything for probably a good couple of years. I really just wanted to kind of get myself sorted out and be really on solid ground. And when I was ready to start dating again, I took one of my father's lessons to heart. Dad, at seminars, it would inevitably happen at every event. Somebody would look at Bob Proctor and say, how do I find that perfect relationship? And what he would have people do is get like a big board or a piece of paper even, and write a circle in the middle of what your ideal partner. And then these lines or starbursts going out of that circle with the different qualities of that person. So I thought, I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to start building the perfect woman for me. And so I did it in a Word document, and I just started to write out what I was looking for in a partner, in a woman, the qualities that she would have, how she would be, how she would love me, and how I would love her and treat her. And I just started writing out all these different qualities so that I could get really clear on what it was that I wanted. And I would put that document just on my desktop. And every morning when I opened the computer, I'd open up that document and I would read it. And sometimes I would maybe add something further to it. Other times, if I discovered something that really wasn't that important, I would take it out. And I really honed it down, and I just gave it energy every day. I just really started thinking about this perfect woman. I would write in a gratitude journal every morning, all the different things I was grateful for. And one of the things I would start writing in the gratitude journal is that this woman is coming to me. She's on her way, and I would really get into the emotion of it. Well, working with Cory, and I'll let her share this other part of the story, I really got to know who Cory was, and I'll let her share how we got kind of put together. But it was interesting. I was always intrigued and interested in Cory. She fit all of the qualities that were in my document, what I was looking for in a woman. But we worked together. And I just felt like that's a boundary I really can't cross. I really shouldn't, go there because we're working together. And so I never did. Well, one day, I don't know, back in 2016, I guess, I was up in Toronto visiting family. I was staying at my brother's, and I can remember where I was driving. I was driving down this one particular road, and I was talking to Gina, my dad's assistant, and a really good friend of mine. And I said to Gina, at that time, I was about to turn 55 years old, big number for me. I don't know why. I love that number. I wanted to do something special for my 55th birthday. And I had always envisioned I would be going with this woman of my dreams to Italy or do something really special. I had no woman in my life. And Gina suggested I call somebody up and ask if she'd want to go, somebody that was coming to some of our seminars. And I said to Gina, Gina, I'm really not interested in that person. I said, there's somebody else I'm really kind of crazy about. Well, Gina said to me, she said to Brian, it's Cory, isn't it? I was blown away. I thought, oh my God, how did Gina know that I've got the, I got the hots for Cory? And but she just did. And I said to her, I said, yeah. But I said, we work together. I said, I can't, that's just not a line I don't feel I should cross. And Gina, in no uncertain terms, said to me, Brian, you need to let Cory know how you feel. And from that moment on, it was just like in my head, I've got to let Cory know how I feel. And I guess a little piece of me was thinking, maybe Gina knows something that I don't know. Maybe Cory is interested in me. Anyways, I get back to Florida and I'm at home, and this has been like going crazy in my mind for a number of days. And I thought, I'm going to call Cory and let her know how I feel. I thought I just got to pull the plug and do it. So I did. And Cory's response to me was, I really like you too, Brian. And that was it. And I was like, it's like, oh no. I have let this cat out of the bag. Now I look like an idiot. I think she just likes me. She doesn't, she's not interested in me. And I hung up the phone feeling a little bit dejected. And then I was replaying the conversation in my mind. And I thought, I don't think she understood what I meant. So I called her back. And I was very clear what I meant. Well, Cory was like dead silent for quite a while. And then she said to me, she says, Brian, I live in Alaska. You live in Florida. How would we make this work? Well, as soon as she said that, then I just knew she was kind of interested. So I said to her, I said, I'm not sure how we'll make it work, but if you're interested and, you have an interest in me as well, we'll find a way. It was like my father, I could hear him speaking through me. Dad always says, where there's a will, there's a way. Like if you're interested, you'll find the way. And that was kind of the start of it. I think Cory should finish off the story about how we got paired up and all that. But that was how I brought her into my life. Here's the cool thing before I throw it over to Cory is she fit absolutely everything on my list. The great part about making that list and really focusing on the ideal woman was it enabled me that if I went on a date, I knew right away if this person was right for me or not, because I had set my expectations as to what I was looking for. And I was never going to settle again. And that was a really great thing for me. Well, Cory fit that list to a T. I mean, absolutely everything. The only thing that was on the list that she didn't fit was at that time, I thought it would be important to have somebody that lived kind of in the same state that I was living. And she was like the absolute other opposite corner of the country. But in the end, I knew that didn't matter. So, I let that one go. But aside from that, I mean, she fit absolutely every quality to a T. And it was pretty magical. Now I'll let her finish the rest of the story because it's kind of fun.
Before you finish the story, Cory, how long did it take from you writing the list to you guys then, you maybe sharing or getting together? What was the time frame there?
Boy, that's a good question. So I'd have to guess, Peter. I would say it was somewhere between 6 months and a year, give or take. Yeah.
Persistence.
Not that long.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about making the list, about doing the exercise though, is it makes you so clear on what you're looking for. But what it also does is it sort of turns you into that person as well. You start becoming what you're looking for. You start doing the inner work to be the vibrational match for, or the energetic match for what you're looking for. So that's the really beauty and power of that exercise.
Yeah.
Gosh, where should I pick it up, Brian? So before that phone call, Brian and I worked together and we would see each other at events. And Brian's Brian. Bob used to say from the stage, if you don't like Brian, there's something wrong with you. Because he truly is the kindest person you're ever going to meet. And it's real. Like it just is real. And so everybody loves Brian, and I loved Brian, but I didn't think about a future, like that. So we were working events together and we were in LA. This was, gosh, I don't know what year it was, 2014, 2015. And Bob decided that he needed to be able to see people from his team from the stage. And if you've ever been on a stage, you know there's bright lights and it's very hard to see who's past that front row. And so he orchestrated that a table would be just to the left of the stage, and that he could look over and make eye contact with the people sitting there, and that whoever was sitting there would make sure that what he was saying was being noted and followed through on, that we'd be keeping his promises, because he made a lot of promises from the stage. And so then he decided that it would be me and Brian that would be sitting at that table. Like, he put us there. And I remember the first time he came to me and said, "You're going to be sitting at this table. That's where I want you during these events." And I'm thinking, I can't do that. Like, I have other work to do during your events. I'm quite busy actually during your events. That's not going to work at all, but you don't get to say that when Bob says something he wants. And so I went to Gina and I said, "Bob has set up this table and he wants me like sitting there the whole time." She goes, "Then you're going to sit there. Like, you're fine. We'll be fine without you. You're okay." So I'm sitting at the table with Brian, and it's just the two of us. We had a third chair that was for Bob, and he would come sit with us whenever there was a break or he gave the audience an exercise. And in hindsight, we understand now this was completely orchestrated by Bob. Bob knew we belonged together. He saw it before we did, and he just wanted to nudge things along. And he would come sit with us and like ask us probing questions to nudge us along. I mean, he was Bob. He was pretty brilliant. And so we sat there. We really got to know each other. And kind of an interesting story, I don't think we've told this one yet. It was during one of those events, and it was in LA. It wasn't the first time we were at this table. It was like a year later or something. Brian and Bob had already talked about Brian, his feelings towards me. And while we were sitting at the table, Brian started telling me about a blind date he had that night in LA. And it was like the second day of a 3-day event. And I'm like, oh, he's telling me who set him up, and that he wasn't sure how he felt about it, but that he was going to meet this woman for dinner. And I'm like, oh, that's great. Good for you. I mean, I wanted Brian to be happy. And so then was it before or after you went out? Was it before or after?
Before or after I went out?
Yeah, I think it was before.
It was before.
Before. So he called me or sent me a text and said, "Could you meet me in the lobby for a coffee?" I'm like, "Sure." And so I meet him in the lobby for coffee, and Bob is like hiding in the in the hotel lobby. I didn't see him. I saw him later, and
he was hiding behind the fern.
Yeah, he told us later. And he had kind of pushed Brian to do this. Before you go on this date, go meet Cory in the coffee shop. Do you remember this, Brian? So I come downstairs and meet Brian for coffee, and he says, "Well, I'm just getting ready to leave. I'm going to go on this date, but I want you to know you're really the one I'd rather be going on this date with." And I was like, huh.
Very smooth, Brian.
Yeah. Okay. I wasn't sure what to think of that at all. And so because I wasn't sure, I was kind of like, well, you just have a good time now. That's great. Because it caught me so off guard. And then I saw Brian leave, and his dad comes out from behind the pillar, and I could see them talking. And I'm like, what is going on? What are they up to? And then Brian goes on his date. The next day, he was like, "No, there won't be a second date. She was very nice, but no, not what I'm looking for." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And so then I think it was really soon after that he called me in Alaska. And, that first phone call, after I hung up and I said, "Oh, I like you too, Brian." I thought, oh, that was a very interesting phone call. But it is Brian Proctor, impression of increase, making everyone feel special this is something Brian would do. Like he would call someone if he was thinking about them and tell them how special he thinks they are. So this is a Brian Proctor thing. This isn't an I'm interested in you thing. And so I just sort of blew it off. And then I got the second phone call. And then I was like, okay, that's clear. And Brian definitely channeled his dad immediately. As soon as I said, how would this work? He immediately said, we're not going to think about the how. If you're interested, let's just progress and see how we feel about things, and the how will unfold. It will show itself as we go forward. And I was like, oh, okay. But I still wasn't sure what to think, because I was very much in the mechanics of it all, very much doing the geography and all of that. And, you know, we tell this story in the book, how there was a 4-hour time difference, and I don't enjoy talking on the phone. And so those were really the first really big steps. And then we had our first date probably 2 months later, because it was the next time we saw each other. And then 3 months later, he proposed. And I just found myself in this wave of like just going. And I didn't know what I was doing, because I'm an extremely cautious person. And I was telling the group this morning that it really speaks to Brian. Brian is such a kind and gentle-hearted person, and really easy. Like he's just easy to get along with. But when he decides he wants something and he focuses all of his energy on it, there is no stopping that train. There's no stopping that train. And I've seen him do it. I've witnessed it. And I've had to at times say, okay, whoa, cowboy, I'm not sure I'm ready for this to come into our life that fast. Can you like pull back on your powers just a little bit? But I got to experience that when he put his sights on me, because I found myself just caught up. And what he was able to do was to get me to suspend all of my disbelief or my questioning that I would normally do, the how that I lived in. He was able to really get me to release that and to instead imagine that it would work. Imagine a future where normally I'd be going, I don't think this will work because you're in Florida and I don't like Florida. And I'm in Alaska and I actually love Alaska, and you don't like being cold and I don't like being hot. No, this absolutely is not going to work. I mean, like that's where my head would go. But somehow Brian, with his superpowers, was really able to get me to let go of all that. And I have no doubt that came from, that is just innate with Brian, from having been raised by Brian, or by Bob, having been raised by Bob.
Yeah.
He can do that. And he decides when he's going to do it. So it's not like he's doing it all the time. He really chooses what he wants to put energy on. But once he does, you better get out of his way, because the next thing you know, you're going to have a big boat out in front of the house. And there it is. I look at it every day going, how exactly did that happen? So it was fascinating to me. And once I let go of all of that questioning that I just do as a naturally as my paradigm, I really got to enjoy it in a completely different way. It was really an exercise for me in of hitting that, if you know Bob's work, hitting the terror barrier over and over and over and over, and just trusting. And Bob constantly telling me, you're okay. And I'd be like, like I had plans, I had my whole life, you're okay.
That's so beautiful.
What an amazing story.
Yeah. And actually, Cory, you should actually explain a little bit about like kind of slight, about the process. Like you make a decision and you don't think about the how, right? Brian, you guys both obviously embody this so well. And then once you're starting to I would say maybe adapt or grow into the goal, you're going to hit a terror barrier because you're going to hit your fears and your concerns and your paradigm that doesn't want you to move forward, and then you have to go through it. But maybe you can explain it in your own words because you say it so beautifully.
Well, which part? Me hitting the terror barrier?
Yeah, like the process, you know, like the process that when Brian said, well, I like you and I want to be with you, and go into your imagination and then don't talk about the how.
Well, I really had to put my belief in Brian. You know how Bob would say, if you don't have belief in something, borrow my belief.
Yeah.
I really had to put my belief in Brian that he could see this working. And when I agreed to that daily phone call, he really helped me along to see how that could be. And, you know, I was really scared because I lived in a small town, 8,000 people, 15 miles of road. I'd lived there 30 years. I had quite a life there, you know, that I'd built. I was a single mom of 2 kids, and I have a really strong and beautiful friend group. And then I like had to make a decision to start telling them about Brian before they even knew who Brian was. And I realized I sounded a little bit crazy. And I think they were a little bit concerned, you know, about me. And then, oh, it was so interesting. We had an event in Hawaii not long after this. And so Brian and I were going to be there together as a couple because we're now dating, even though it's kind of virtual dating, we're dating, or we've agreed to see if this will work. And my 4 of my closest friends that I've known for 30 years in Alaska are going to be in Hawaii in the exact same place we are. And I was like, oh, do I tell them that we're there? You know, because we're working an event. And so I remember I told Jen, well, actually, Jen, Brian and I are in Hawaii at the same time. She goes, oh, well, your 2 worlds are about to collide. You no longer get to keep this separate. And I was just like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And I know that sounds dramatic, but I was in my 50s, you know, it's not like I was a 20-something. I had a lot of responsibility. I had a son who was leaving for university to go to become an engineer. And I had such a different focus. And I knew I appeared kind of nuts, but I will say it was Brian and it was Bob as well. Bob just really like assuring me that you can do this, go through the terror barrier. You know, what are you questioning? Why? You know, step back from that, look at your fears and ask yourself where that comes from. And when you start asking yourself where that fear comes from, you can usually trace it back to an experience, a childhood experience, a previous relationship experience, or something else. And the beauty of Bob was he knew that logically, because I am somewhat left brain, that would make sense to me. And that if I could do that, then it was easier for me to recognize, oh, okay, that's because of this. And it doesn't have to be that way. I can change that. Yeah. And so it was a lot of that.
Yeah. I love that though, that you say, you know, don't just look away from your fears or don't try to kind of fight them. Actually tune into them a bit, right? And understand where they come from so you can then move through them, which is beautiful.
That's how I had to do it. That's how I couldn't just pretend it wasn't there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That wouldn't help me move forward. I had to like turn and face it and say, okay, where is this coming from? And is it rational?
And so you too had to raise your vibration to match the vibration of Brian, right?
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All the time.
So
yeah. And then, you know, I got pulled into Proctor World. That was Toronto Proctor World was very different from Cory Alaska World. Yeah.
So Brian, you had this goal, right? You've had this idea, you articulated it, you imagined it every morning, and then it was finally there. What was that like for you?
It was, you know what, Peter, it was just kind of natural, because it's something that I had been visualizing for so long. I just knew it would come to be. And when I realized it was Cory, it just all made sense because she really fit everything. So it just felt natural. What she didn't tell you there was that the very next day after we met, or I got to meet her friends from Alaska, I asked her to marry me. And that was only 3 months after we started dating. But the cool thing was that, number one, I had this thing, I knew the qualities of Cory, and she did fit everything on my list. The great part was that for years before we got together, we were good friends. And we'd be at events, we'd go walking together, we would be talking about each other's lives. So I really knew who she was. And it was like, man, I just want to spend the rest of my life with this woman. So it was like, there was like no thought at all to why it wouldn't work, because she was everything I was looking for. I guess I could only hope that I was what she was looking for, you know, but I was willing to bet on what my vision was. And so that next day I asked her to marry me. And it was a scary moment for me because it was so quick. It just, you know, the normal situation, you don't normally ask somebody to marry you that quickly. But it was just, I was so sure. And she was so perfect for everything I was looking for that it was just kind of it was the natural conclusion. So for me, it wasn't like a surprise, oh, this happened. It was just a natural conclusion to a vision that I had been working on. So it just felt right, felt normal.
Brian, can I ask, just for the ladies listening, how did you propose?
Yes.
Did you have a ring? Did you go on your knee? Did you take her out to a restaurant? Was it a phone call?
Well, so I proposed to her on a beach in Hawaii. Cory and I used to love going for walks. So we went for a walk along the beach. And we hit this one spot on the beach that had some trees. It was really private. It was pretty. There was no other people around. And I remember saying to Cory, let's sit down for a minute. And Cory looked at me and she says, sit down, we're going for a walk. Let's keep walking. And I thought, well, here goes. So then I looked at her and I said, well, just hold on a second. And no, I didn't get down on a knee or anything like that, but I just faced her. And I had a ring in my pocket and I pulled the ring out and I asked her to marry me. Well, the look of shock was certainly something, but I'll tell you what I love, and I remind her of this all the time, is that she enthusiastically said yes. It wasn't just a yes, it was an enthusiastic yes. And it was just a wonderful thing. And yeah, there you go.
And my paradigm was screaming in my ear, what are you doing? You know, I had done the work as well, making the visual of what's important to you. I didn't put as much energy on it as Brian did, because that wasn't my focus. Finding a relationship wasn't my focus at that time in my life. But I remember doing the work because I had been just in not a big relationship, but I had dated someone who it was a nice guy. But I remember when I met him that all I'd been thinking about, oh, it'd be so nice to have someone to have a cup of coffee with in the morning and maybe a glass of wine with at night. And those were really the only two things I thought about. And he fit that perfectly. But between that glass of coffee in the morning and the glass of wine at night, there was a lot of other stuff in the rest of the day that did not fit very well. So after that ended, I got more serious about defining what was important to me. And at the top, I put kindness, and I weighted it. You know, above 50%. Like that was a quality that was very, very important to me. And I got really more specific. And I think I pretty much landed the kindest man on earth. So I have strong powers too. I'm not as aware of them.
That's amazing.
That's so beautiful. I mean, just meeting you guys, the kindness just explodes out of your energy, and it's so beautiful, both of you. So it's definitely like, and I think you could just tell from a person when there's this kindness, you feel it energetically. You can't dismiss it. It's very hard to dismiss someone who's kind.
Well, it's easy with Cory. It's easy.
That's very generous.
That's because you guys were like kind of in a friend zone at first, right?
Exactly.
Too.
Oh, very much.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, it was today we were talking about that exercise and how important it is, not just for people looking for a partner, but people who are in relationships
Yes.
to do the exercise, to get clear, like remind yourself of what's important. And then also identify those qualities in your partner and appreciate it again in a whole new way and have them do the same thing for you.
Yeah.
That's so nice. And do you guys do this together or do you do it separately?
We do it separately. We talk about it together, but we do the exercise separately. I think it's kind of well, I guess it could be whatever you want it to be, but for me, it's really a personal exercise.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it's such an important lesson, that what you both shared is that you don't just go from one relationship to another hoping it's going to be different. You actually focus inward on yourself and realize, hey, hang on a second. If I just go see somebody else, I'm going to repeat the same thing, right? It's going to be a different person, different name, whatever. But fundamentally, I'm going to still be the same person unless I actually go tap in to myself. I think that's such a beautiful lesson, and to keep on doing it when you're in a relationship, not to stop, right?
We also
That's
do
right.
a relationship.
100%.
Yeah, separately and together. We actually created a little like a relationship image, if you want to call it that way.
Well,
I
you know
love
what,
that.
Peter, that was so important for me because I was reliving the same experience over and over, and it wasn't working for me. So it was like, it's time to implement something that my father had been teaching at the seminars, and it's like, why haven't I used this for me? And my gosh, what a difference it made,
100%.
Absolutely. I mean, you guys are living your true lifelong love affair, right?
Yeah.
Like it's really, and it's growing every day. I'm sure you guys love each other more and more every day.
Every day, honey.
Every day.
Well, one of the things oh, sorry, do you want to say something, Cory?
I was just going to say, I have never spent so much time with anyone that I've spent with Brian. I mean, even, of course, my children, but then they had busy lives. So I was more just like their managers. But Brian and I are together 24/7. And I always thought of myself as so independent, which I was. And I was, to be with someone that much, I wasn't sure what that would be like. And it's so interesting now when one of us has to travel, how much I miss him. It's like, oh gosh, I've never had that. I've never had how being away from someone, I miss them like this. So yeah, it's very nice.
That's amazing.
Yeah. What qualities, Brian, did you want well, obviously now it's Cory, but at the time when you wrote down your list, what qualities did you write for your
I'd have to go back and really think about it because it was a while ago now, but I know the essence of it. The qualities I was looking for was somebody that had integrity, who was definitely warm, loving, and kind, somebody who prioritized their kids, somebody, I was looking for a woman who, I don't know, it maybe sounds funny, but that knew how to make it on her own, didn't require me to, help her life or any of that nature. That was kind of, all along those qualities. I wanted somebody that enjoyed the outdoors, and Cory is that to a crazy amount. And just, somebody who was loving and kind. And I know that maybe sounds simple, but when you really affix on specific things like that, it's probably more of how she treats people and how she is. we all, I think, have seen people that don't necessarily treat everybody well. They maybe treat some people well, but not everybody. In my eyes, there's a little flaw there, you know, and I wanted somebody who would treat everybody well. And that's Cory. She treats everybody really well. Like I love when we have visitors, anybody comes, Cory is like making sure everything in the house is done just right, that, you know, everything's set up for this person or that person, that we're always doing things that would be good for them. She's just thoughtful. So it was all things like that that I really,
That's
yeah.
so
It's
beautiful.
an amazing list, isn't it? And you know
Yeah.
what's not on the list? How much money they have, or what status they have, or what job they have. It's all about the essence of the person, right?
You know what? And that's a good point, Peter. I mean, now, hey, maybe for somebody to have some of that on the list is important. For me, it wasn't. It had nothing to do with money or any of that kind of stuff. Other than I did want a woman who was independent, who didn't need me to fulfill their life. And you know, if you know Cory, that's Cory. So it's I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, that's so nice. And Cory, are there other qualities that you wanted on your list other than kindness? Did you write anything else?
Well, kindness was the one I really focused on. And I guess I honestly don't remember what else was on my list. You know, healthy was a big one, healthy attitude, you know, all those things. Again, like Peter said, like the essence is really what I focused on. The interesting thing was Brian is so different from any of my previous choices. And so I really had to recognize that and make a choice to make a different choice. And sometimes it wasn't hard. It wasn't hard at all, but it was curious. It was very, very curious to me. Like I was like, oh, okay, so this guy doesn't know how to use a chainsaw. That's okay. I know how to use a chainsaw. So I'm going to be with somebody who doesn't know those things. Like I remember the first time he came to Alaska and I was fixing a toilet in one of my bathrooms. And I asked him, could you grab me a Phillips screwdriver from my toolbox? And he goes, is that the one with the little star on the end?
Oh my God.
And I was like, okay, this is so different, you know, but it's okay. And I have come to just absolutely love and embrace all the parts of Brian that were unfamiliar to me that he's introduced me to. And so that's really, you know, caused expansion in me.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah. So Cory, you talked a lot about, or not a lot, you just mentioned how much time you spent with each other, right?
Yes.
And one of the things you've been doing is
Yes.
this book, right?
Uh-huh.
So My Father Knew the Secret. What a beautiful title. So tell us about what that was like working together.
Well, do you want to first tell them about the title, and then I'll talk about how the last year has been. In 2019, Brian started writing this book. It didn't have a title. He started writing this book with his dad, not with his dad, but his dad knew he was writing it and they would talk about it frequently. And Bob would offer ideas for parts of the book. And then when Bob got sick, you know, this got put aside, of course. And so after Bob passed, Brian picked it back up, probably in April of 2022. And it was very hard, but it kind of became therapy as well. And we agreed that he would just write 500 words a day and that would be his goal. And that seemed doable. And that was a good place to get started. Well, it's funny because I have a journal and I noticed in my journal this week that it was a year ago this week that he handed it over to me. And it was the book of all his stories. And so then I really got to work going through the stories, editing, adding, as he likes to say, adding color to the stories. Because of course I have a lot of memories of those stories as well. And so there were details I remembered that he didn't necessarily include. And then reading his stories triggered ideas for other stories. And I'd say, well, Brian, what about this story? Like, I remember one of them was the movie The Secret, like that wasn't in the first version. And so he's like, oh yeah. And I was like, you got to tell that story about The Secret, about how your dad got into the movie. And then we, Uncle Joe, that wasn't included in the first version. So we just really sat on opposite sides of the office, and he would finish a story, hand it to me. I would work on the story, hand it back to him. And that's really what we did for the better part of a year. And then it's funny because it was June when we decided, let's get this out by your dad's birthday. Like, we had been working on it for so long, and we'd been reading it and editing it and sending it back and forth to each other, and editing and editing and editing and proofing. And then we just made this decision, July 5th. And we had a guy, a lovely guy we're working with. Is he in Austria? Is Trace in Austria? And we're like, Trace, can you do it? Can it be done by July 5th? And he's like, absolutely, we'll make this work. Well, then it was like handing over this baby. And it's like, oh, are we really ready? Are we really ready to release this? And we did not anticipate the reaction. I don't think we even gave the reaction any thought. We just thought, okay, we've done the best job we can do telling important stories that will help people connect to the lessons of Bob Proctor and connect to the essence of Bob Proctor, and will honor the pioneer that he is in this industry, the road, the road that he helped pave for what it is today. And we thought, okay, that's what we've done. We've done the best we can do. And we did not anticipate the unbelievably heartwarming response we would get to this book, and just how many people are reaching out to us and saying that it's really, really helped them, which has helped us a lot. It's helped us a lot and so the title of the book, I'm going to let Brian tell that story because it's a pretty incredible and powerful story.
Yeah, writing this book, I'll tell you the title in a second. Writing the book was really a great experience. As Cory said, it was almost 4 years in the making. The last year was incredible between just the two of us, with Cory editing everything, and then me reworking certain things, and then Cory reworking it. We were so close to it that we weren't sure, okay, is this really good? We felt it was great. But when you're really in it, you're not as sure. And the response has been, wow, this, really, really makes us happy. When I first started writing it, I didn't have a clue what I was going to call it. I was thinking, live your best life. I, different things like that was running through my head. And I always remember talking to Dad about it. And it just nothing was resonating with me that it was it. And Dad always said to me, he says, Brian, take your time with it. Take your time. There's no rush. You just keep writing and just take your time with it, and the right title will come for you. I said, okay, and I look back on it, and I think sometimes I wonder if he even knew he was going to be here when I was done with it. But the title came to me after Dad passed away. It was in the middle of the night. It was like 3 a.m. I had a vivid dream about my father. And then I woke up, and the title was in my head. My father knew the secret. Cory and I had been working on the book, and the title was right there in my head. So I actually got up and wrote it down because, in the middle of the night, sometimes, you can forget things. And I wrote it down, and I thought, how perfect of a title is that? Because this book, Cory always said to me, she says, Brian, you're the only one that can really write it. Number one, you're his son, but you also worked with him for years. You were with him for his entire journey in the personal development field. And, we were more than father and son. We were like best friends. I mean, we talked multiple times a day. So she says, the perspective that you can give this book is something that nobody else could do. And it just, it felt right. Well, naming the book, My Father Knew the Secret, I mean, I already knew in the book was all the secrets, all the lessons, everything that he taught me as his son, so that I would live a great life. Well, what a lot of people don't know is that my father was truly a pioneer in the self-development industry. He was working it in the 1960s and 1970s when it was not a thing. And it was not until the movie The Secret and the book The Secret came out in like 2006 that my father was really propelled to a worldwide stage. He was 72 years old by that point. You know, a lot of people don't realize that. And that movie opened him up that, you know, he ended up being on Larry King Live, Ellen DeGeneres, Nightline, all kinds of shows. And Bob Proctor was really at that point all of a sudden introduced to the world. And so a lot of people associate The Secret with Bob Proctor. And I thought,
Yeah.
what a perfect title. It just, you know, when something just feels really just right, it's kind of like Cory, just feels right, you know? And I knew it. I knew that was the right title for the book. So that's what we titled it. And boy, it's been a fun experience.
I love the title, Brian, and I love this book so much. I feel like when I read the book, you guys are talking to me. You know, I feel like, and it's done in like you wrote it in such a simple way, easy to read, but it's also very like, I'm sorry, but you have a very elegant writing. I have to say that. Very, very elegant writing, but it's also very easy to read. I'm not a very fast reader.
Mhm.
When I read a book versus when Peter reads a book, there's a very big gap, like in the speed at which it requires me personally to read a book. But reading your book, I feel like it just flows so nicely. It's like and the message is so clear, and I love it because your father, he taught in a very certain way. And this book complements what he's teaching. You're not repeating all of his teachings. You're also just putting in your own perspective and your own experience in it. And it just reaches us in such a different way. So it's such a complimentary, I don't know, piece of like goodness and gold.
Thanks, Lana.
It's
Thank
gold.
you. You know,
Yes, it is
Yeah.
Dad always taught me, he says, if you want to teach somebody something of value, you need to really understand it because you want to teach it simply. And you don't understand something unless you can teach it simply. And, you know, anybody that's ever watched Bob Proctor on YouTube or been to any of his events, he always taught in such a simple way so that we could all understand easily and apply. And that's why, you know, I wrote the book in really a conversational tone. So it was easy to read and understand. The consider points was actually Cory's idea. And I thought, what a great suggestion. Because what that does is, you know, I tell the story and then the consider points actually show you how you can take that and apply it in your life in real time right now. So I think, you know, I'm proud of this book. I think both of us did a great job on it. The response obviously has shown that. And I really feel that for $17 or $19, whatever it costs to get a copy of this book, you're getting everything in it. You know, I'm not back-ending some crazy multi-$1,000 course to learn what it's actually all about. It's all in the book. And, you know, if you want to live a better life, it's all in this book. All you need to do is read it and then just start to practice it and your life will change. So I say that confidently, not because I wrote it or we put it together, but because this book isn't about me. It's really about my father. And it's about how he treated me and the lessons that he taught me so that I could live my best life. And so it was a fun thing to put together, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do know that this is something that you wanted to make this very available for everyone, right? In a very powerful way. And anyone that could, the thing is like The Secret, the movie and the book, The Secret are amazing, but they're not complete. This is a complete, this is a complete guide. And Cory, you were also a coach with Bob, right? So the consideration points, good job. Amazing.
Yeah, I ran his consulting division. So
Yeah.
I supported the consultants. Yeah, and the consider points was really because I thought it was important for the stories to stand alone. I think there's so much value in stories that I thought, let's just pull the teaching out of the stories and put them separate. And it's like the title, My Father Knew the Secret, the word consider was so gentle and it just sort of came to me in the middle of the night. And I know that it's Bob speaking to us. We can feel him cheering us on. We absolutely can feel him cheering us on through all of this. And you're right. We did want to make this available to everyone. We want, just like Bob, he wanted everyone to have this information. And that's what this book was about for us. And before I forget, as you said that, you triggered something for me. Today, maybe it'll be tomorrow, but I think today, the Kindle version will be available. And the audiobook will probably be available in the next few days, which is really exciting because the audio version, I read the consider points, Brian reads the stories, and Gina reads her story, and Bryce Pritchett reads his forward, which was really beautiful to have Bryce read his own forward. It actually just brought tears to my eyes when he sent it to us. So we're excited to release that. And we know there's people in parts of the world who can't get the book. So we're hoping that this will make it easier for them.
That's amazing. And are you guys going to translate that also into different languages?
We sure are.
Yes, we are in the midst of that. I know you're in Germany. I've got a reply after our call here. I've got a reply to a German publisher who is looking to translate it into German. We've got it already translated into Danish, and we're working with some other foreign publishers to get in some other languages as well.
Oh,
In fact, when we go to Copenhagen, we arrive on Monday. Brian is doing his first bookstore book signing, and it'll be in Copenhagen with the Danish book.
Amazing.
that's so
It'll be fun.
yeah. Yeah, this I encourage anyone. I mean, I can't stop talking about this book.
True.
And I've read a lot of books, even the books that, Bob recommended us to read. They're amazing books by James Allen, by Genevieve Biran, and all kinds of books. But this is a very special book. And obviously, Bob really touched our hearts deeply, deeply, deeply. Maybe that's also why it's so close to me too.
I can feel it, Lana.
This is such a beautiful thing, Lana. This has been just absolutely glorious for us because you said we've met before. Have we met in person?
No.
Okay, online with Tommy's thing.
Yeah, with Tommy, yeah.
Okay, so here we have Lana and Peter, and just a few weeks ago we had Jennifer and Billy, people we've never met, who have never been to a live Bob Proctor event. We were so insular in our events. Like we saw a lot of people, we met a lot of people. Now we're meeting people like you and like Jennifer and Billy, who have never been to an event, who were introduced to Bob perhaps through the movie or perhaps through YouTube, who we are realizing have been so affected by him.
Yeah.
And that you haven't even met him. I don't know if we can convey to you enough how much that means to us. Like, it's just so meaningful for us to realize how many people Bob affected that we never met, that we absolutely never met. We never met you before in person. We didn't meet you in LA or Toronto. Jennifer and Billy found Bob during the pandemic, and they're just as attached to him as you two are. And it's just, it kind of blows our mind in the most beautiful way.
Bob never held back anything. He shared everything. And we've done his programs. He shares whatever he shares on YouTube and his programs. Obviously, when you do the programs, you have additional support. You have a community. You have all these things. But even the stick person is like, it's available. It's on his website. It's on YouTube. And he teaches it in such a simple way, but you have access to all of this knowledge. And he never, ever held back. And I love that about Bob. It's such a beautiful example of his true essence of who he is and what he really, really wanted in this world.
He was a special man, that's for sure. And he was beyond committed to teach anybody that would listen, how we can improve our life. He really was. And boy, if you took action, you actually took action with what he was teaching, Man, did he love you. I mean, he loved action takers. He loved people that were out there making it happen. He always said that was the one thing that was missing in The Secret. You know, The Secret talked about visualizing and dreaming about what you want, and you'll bring it into your life. It didn't talk that you've actually got to step out and do something. And you know, Dad's always been big of have that big dream, have that big goal, but then step into it and step out and do something every day to get to it, even if it's little things over time add up. And man, he just loved action takers. So it's, you know, it's great being here with the two of you. I like seeing that you guys take action. You've got a podcast going, you're getting the message out. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. And you just never know where things lead down the road. But it's the action takers in the world that really live a great life and get what they're going after.
Yeah, absolutely. And this does work. And obviously this podcast is about finding your love affair. And Peter and I, when we met, we had it was not the exact same story as you guys, but we also attracted each other because we found what we wanted. We learned from our experiences. We decided what we wanted in a person, and we held that image in our mind. Now, we didn't know Bob at the time when we did it, but this kind of goes back to the example about the yo-yo and the sweater. Bob did it. He held the image in his mind. He felt the sweater on his body. He didn't know what he was doing at the time. Like he couldn't, but we do this so naturally. And oftentimes we do it with things that we actually don't want because we don't take the time to define it. So our paradigm or our conditioning, if you will, defines it for us, and then we're set on that vibration. We attract that thing. But if people take the time to bet on themselves and to actually, even if you're in a relationship, we did this exercise separately when we were in a relationship, and our relationship flourished. Why? Because it's not possible that when someone wants love, they won't find it within their relationship if it exists already. Right? Even if you're two people and you don't agree with each other and there's a lot of tension for whatever reason, if you're both able to take the time and decide what qualities you want in your relationship and from the other person, what you appreciate from the other person, what you want to bring to the table, then it will happen. It will, your relationship will get transformed and you will be able to create that for yourselves. Yeah.
That's great. You know what, Lana, that's perfect. I love that. It's things happen with intention. Things happen with intention.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautifully said. Yeah. So, I want to, do you have any questions, or do you have anything that you want to add?
This has been really nice for us. Thank you.
Thank you too. And thank you for joining us on the podcast. It was such a pleasure. And I honestly, I hope that we get to do this again, because it was personally, I'd love to have you guys on again.
We're always here.
Absolutely.
So fun. Yeah. And I want to encourage everybody to buy the book. Brian, I think you still have your workbook, right? Available in the bonuses?
Yeah. If you just go to brianproctor.com, you can get the book in whatever country you're in. And there's a free bonus that has a workbook that'll accompany it, and some other bonuses. We're always going to be adding different things there. So if you just go to brianproctor.com, you're off to the races.
That's beautiful. And just as one last question. So 55 years old, right? You got the car that you mentioned in the book. And is that also the year where you started dating Cory?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Good.
Yeah. So I can tell you my very first proper date with Cory was the day before my 55th birthday.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. That's special.
Yeah.
That's a way to enter the 55 years into it.
It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect.
That's so cool.
And then we got married while he was still 55.
That's true. After 3 months.
That's true.
Yeah.
Wow. That's super special.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Super cool. Oh, it's amazing. Thank you so much for coming. It was honestly, this has made my day. I think I'm gonna be on a high for a week after this, at least.
Well,
us
thank
too.
you both very much. It's been great talking with you both.
Yeah, and we look forward to talking again. Absolutely.
Perfect. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love for you to rate it and leave a comment in the platform of your choice. This will help the podcast reach more people, and it will help more people find true love. You can also share this podcast with anyone you think would benefit from it. I also welcome any suggestions or questions that you would like me to address in the podcast. Simply send me a DM. All of my information is linked in the show notes below. I've also included all of Brian Proctor's information on where to buy the book and all of his social media links for you to be able to follow him as well, which I highly, highly encourage. I wish you all a wonderful day, and remember that you can truly create and manifest the lifelong love affair that you desire and deserve to have. To your happily ever after, Lana.